Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are looking at chapter 4 of the Cambridge IGCSE ICT. Chapter 4, that is networks and the effects of using them. So to get started, the main objectives for today's for this tutorial, we'll briefly look at computer networks. So basically under this, we'll be looking at network terms and devices. Then we'll look at the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth networks. Then we'll look at a little bit of cloud computing, which the aspect which has to deal with computer networks. And then we'll look at types of networks, such as local area networks, wireless local area networks, and the WAN. And then the second part of the tutorial will look at network issues and communication. So under this, we'll be looking at security and types of authentication. We'll look at anti-malware, and then we'll look at electronic conferencing. So we'll look at like video conferencing, web conferencing, and audio conferencing under electronic conferencing. So now, the first thing we want to look at is what is a network. So before we even get into whatever, we need to understand exactly what a network is. So firstly, you should know that a network is just an interconnection of two or more computers to share resources. So these resources could be a printer, it could be software, it could just be data, it could be files. So when you network computers together, probably computers in a lab, you want to share something between them, maybe emails, videos, images. So those are resources. So you want to share a common printer. So that those are resources. And then we also need to understand that the network can be wired, meaning it is connected with cables like what we have here, or it can be wireless, where we will make use of a router and then Wi-Fi, such as what we have here. So that is something too, which is very important. Now, the internet, as we know, is the largest network. For instance, this video is recorded somewhere and you can watch it from any part of the world. That is the internet. Now, what do networks do, or what are they used for? So what do we use networks for? Basically, networks allow file sharing, printer sharing, data sharing, and other resources. So mainly these are the use of the computer networks. Now, just before we get into the different network devices and terms, firstly, this is a question which it's quite interesting. A school, so it's a past question. A school wants to buy some new computers. Some of the computers they buy will be networked, and others will be standalone computers which will not be networked. Describe two advantages of using networked computers. So why will you want to use net, or why will you want, or if you want to advise them, why would you want them to use network computers? The first point is fewer printers are needed. Obviously, you can use one print. Maybe 5 people can use just a single printer. Next, you find that work can be accessed from any computer. So once the computers are networked, you can always access work from any of the computers. Then we also have that software can be shared or updated more easily. So that is also an advantage of networking computers. And lastly, we have our computers can be access the internet through one connection. So that's also very important. Now B says you should describe three disadvantages of using network computers. So even though even with the advantages, there are always disadvantages. So there's greater risk of hackers, greater risk of viruses, costly to implement due to network equipment, and slow printing if the printer queues are long. So if 5 people probably are using one printer, if all the 5 people send one command at the same time, there's going to be a queue. So that waiting time is what is disadvantageous to a person using network computers. Now, let's look at computer network devices and some terms. So not in any particular order, we'll look at devices together with the terms. So the first device, which is in fact, it is one of the most important. Without this, you cannot access the internet. That is what we call the network's interface card. That's the NIC. So without a network interface card in your computer, you cannot access the internet. So it allows a device to connect to a network by what? Turning 1 to 0 into an electrical signal. So basically, the network interface card helps your computer to connect to the internet. Now, a network interface card is usually integrated into the motherboard on most computers. So when your computer is built, it has an inbuilt network interface card. That's what helps you to network. Don't misunderstand it with a wireless card. They are two different things. So like what you have here, this is actually a wireless card. The network interface card is actually integrated in the motherboard in most cases. And in some cases, yeah, you can even add on to maybe add a wireless card, probably for desktop. Most of them come without wireless cards. Now, the next network term, this one is a term we have media access control, which is the MAC address or physical address. So basically, the MAC address is a 48 bits number which uniquely identifies a device connected on a network. So you need to also understand that the MAC address is unique to every computer. So no two computers have the same MAC address, and it is usually issued upon manufacturing. So this is an example of a MAC address. So the first four, this the first two, four, six, like the first part of the MAC address is the manufacturer's code. So maybe you have the like HP, Dell, and all those things, or Apple. And then the last part of it will contain what the device serial number. So that serial number, that is what actually uniquely identifies your computer on a network. So it is very useful when you troubleshooting a network. You can find out that, oh, maybe the problem is coming from this computer because the MAC address never changes. It is always unique. So you can know that, oh, the problem is on computer A or is from computer B. Now, another network term we need to look at is Internet Protocol. So IP, we already hear IP address. So basically, the IP address is a unique code assigned to a device by an Internet service provider. So whoever is providing Internet services normally they assign your IP addresses when you connect online, connect to the Internet. So internet protocols, like the protocol, basically there are rules which define how communication you can communicate through a network, or how users communicate through the network. So those are the protocols define the rules for how you can communicate on a network. Now, the IP address identifies the location of every user's device on a network. So wherever you're located, that is how they can track you using your IP address, because every country has kind of a unique IP allocation, IP address, where they allocate their IP addresses. Now, IP addresses changes whenever a device changes location. So if you move your device maybe from one place to another, definitely the IP address should also change. So take note of this. That is a main difference between IP address and MAC address. That's what some people always confuse it. So the MAC address, everything is fixed, it doesn't change, but the IP changes when the location changes. So it is not like fixed to a particular device. So for IP, addressing two main versions are being used. We have the IPv version 4 and the IP version 6. So IP version 4 is just a 32-bit and IP version 6 is just 132-bit. We don't need to go deep into this. This is just provision. And then you'll find that, for instance, this is an example of IP version 4 address. So this is it. It's a 32-bit code, meaning if we have this this is 32-bit, and this one, this is how you do when you see something like, normally this is IPv version 6, 132 bits representation. That's how they are assigned 132-bit address to your computer or device when you connect to a network. Now, another common network the term we have is data packets. So whenever you connect to a network, say we want to share resources, these resources could be messages. You send a message to one person and the person receives it. So data packets, mainly a data packet is data sent from a sender to a receiver. So it's just part of it. So whenever someone sends data to another person, the data is usually the data is usually split up and transmitted in form of packets. So the data is broken down into small parts, which are we call data packets, and is sent one at a time. Each data packet is transmitted separately from sender to receiver. So at the level of the receiver now, or at the level of the network, the data recombines, like it brings itself back together, and the whole message is compiled and the receiver can read the whole message. So whenever someone sends you a message, The message actually, depending on how big it is or the size, it is split up into data packets and then transmitted before you can receive it. Now, very important, a data packet has what? A header section which contains the following: the sender's IP address, the receiver's IP address, a sequence like of the packet number and the packet size, and lastly, the number of packets that make up the message. So this is simply to tell you that if I send you a long message, it is split up into small packets and transmitted through the network. But now, how does that message combine back at the receiving end? It makes use of this information at the header of that data packet. So this is an example of a header here. Then we have the payload and the trailer. So the header basically will have the sender's IP address, the receiver's IP address, which helps to identify where the message is going to, the sequence or packet number. So maybe packet number one, packet number two, and so on and so forth. So they will rearrange themselves maybe from one all the way to 1 million or whatever it is to form the full message, and then the packet size, and then obviously the number of packets in a message, so that the network ensures that the whole message is compiled. If there are 20 packets, all the 20 packets must come together to form that message. So basically that's what the header holds, and the payload is just the actual message, and the trailer is just the ending part of your message which is being sent. So this is an example of something here. You send the data here, it's split up into packet, then transmitted, and the receiver can see. So the sends data hoops through the router and is moved to receiver's IP address. So basically that's what happens. We're actually going to look at the router as we move ahead. Now we have hubs and switches. So these are network devices. So we have a hub and a switch. They work alongside each other. They almost have the same uses. But now let's look at a hub, for instance. A hub is simply a hardware device. It's something like this. Device that allow other devices to connect together to form a local area network. So for instance, what we see here, this is a hub. This is an example of a hub connecting different computers. It could be your computer lab. Now, a hub transmits and receives data packets to all devices on the network. So this is one big problem with a hub. If PC1, for instance, wants to send information or a message just to PC3, it is going to end up sending and if the network is connected by a hub, once PC1 sends that message into the hub, it's going to broadcast the message to the whole network. So that is the main problem with the hub. It cannot send a message just from the sender to to a particular receiver. So that is a big problem with the hub. So this makes hubs not to be very secure since data packets are sent to all devices on the network. So hubs also, they create unnecessary traffic. They create unnecessary traffic. So if you imagine you want to send something just from here to here, and it ends up going everywhere. So that's unnecessary traffic. And hubs cannot communicate beyond the LAN. So that's something you need to have in mind. This hub cannot uh, communicate out of the LAN. So any message sent stays within the network. So later on, we will see how can I connect my hub out of this network or to another network. Now the next thing is a switch. So very often we'll say a hub is like a dumb version of a switch, or they say a hub is dumb and the switch is smart. So basically a switch is a smart version of a hub. It stores the MAC addresses of all devices connected to the port on a lookup table. So when you have a switch, what happens is any computers connected to that switch, it uses a lookup table like this, stores all the MAC addresses of the different computers. Now, if PC1 wants to send information to PC3, as we earlier saw, we have data packets. So the data packet at the header section, you have the sender's IP address, the receiving, and those things. But in this case, we believe the switch makes use of the MAC addresses. So it is able to identify from the message that this data or information has to be sent to this particular MAC address and it makes use of the lookup table to trace that computer and send that information only to that particular user. So that is a very big advantage with the switch. So most networks now they make use of switches. Now, switches are more secure than hubs and do not waste bandwidth as in hubs, as we saw on just create unnecessary traffic or bottlenecks. So that is not the case when you're dealing with switches. Now, a switch cannot communicate beyond the LAN as well. Just like the hub, the switch can also communicate out of the network. We will later on will find out we need to use a router to connect a network, a small LAN like this to another network or to the internet. Now, look at the different let's look at a comparison between hubs and switches. Firstly, you need to understand that hubs, they are both used to connect devices in a local area network. So both the switch and the hub are used for that. And secondly, we've seen that they cannot communicate outside the LAN. Thirdly, they transmit data packets. However, for the hub, data packets are sent to all computers, while for the switch, is able to send data packets only to the desired device. So the hub doesn't have a lookup table during data transfer, while the switch has. Then there is no MAC address used during transfer. The switch makes use of a MAC address. Now, then another network device we need to look at is what we call a bridge or bridges. Now, basically, a bridge is just a device we use to connect two LANs, that's two local area networks together, which have the same communication protocols. Communication protocols means communication rules. So if I have LAN 1, LAN 2, LAN 3 having the same communication protocols, I can use a bridge to connect all of them together so that they can share resources. Next, the chief of the whole network, or the most important aspect of a network is the router. The router does quite a lot. It is smart. It's able to connect a network onto the internet. So if you have a network and you want to connect to the internet or to the outside world, you need a router. So that's where the router comes in. So basically, they join local area networks to the internet. So how do they do this? That's what we need to find out. So each router has its own IP address, which enables it to send and receive data packets between different network devices based on their IP addresses. So routers basically they use what we call a routing table to store the IP addresses of all devices in their network and connected on the network. So this router, for instance, is able to store all these IP addresses. It's able to store all these IP addresses. So this is the IP address of the router, and it's able to store all the IP addresses of these other devices, which are connected, which are wired onto it. While these devices, which are also connected, like mobile devices, are connected wirelessly, it's also able to store their IP addresses. So whenever you want to send a message to any particular device, it uses the IP address from the data packet, as we earlier discussed, that the data packet has a header section which has the sender's IP address, the receiver's IP address. So the router is able to pick out that information from there and send the message just to that particular user. So if, for instance, we have a router connecting many networks to the internet, when a router receives a data packet, it inspects it to determine the destination IP addresses. So the data packet is either sent to its local hub, so the router should also have its local hub or switch, or transmitted to another network till it reaches the correct destination. So a router can connect so many networks together. So if a message is sent maybe from the internet or from one area to it's being sent to the other. So it hoops through all the routers. Is it for me? No. Sends it forward. Is it for me? Till it reaches wherever its final destination. Uh, where the whole message is recompiled into the data packets are combined to form the message. Now, also, every device connected to the internet has an assigned IP address. If you connect like this laptop connected to the internet via the router, you will have an IP address assigned to it. You watching this video now, you have been assigned an IP address which you are using. So IP addresses are assigned depending on the country. So each country has its own way the IP addresses are assigned. Now, web pages have unique IP addresses and domain names. So if you open a web page, it has a unique IP address and domain name. So you have to also take note of that. So web pages, like what if you want to browse, they are stored on web. Once you visit the internet, you open a web page, maybe www dot whatever, you'll find that that web page is stored on a web server. So if somebody here goes online, takes something, he can send it through the whole network to this person to yeah, I can send it through. These are networks that are connected together. So you can use the message can be transmitted through the network to the other network. So you can even send from this side to this side. So that is the nice aspect of using a router and maybe switches in to connect different networks together. Now, routers send and receive data. So routers only store IP addresses of the devices. The MAC addresses are not stored. So routers make use of IP addresses. We discussed a switch later on previously, and we mentioned that the switch stores the MAC address, but for the router it stores only IP address because each device usually allocated a unique IP address when it connects. Now, routers can send and receive data packets to the switch on their local network, which then redirects them to the destination device. So if I send from here, it moves past, enters into this router, and it knows that, oh, that message is coming to this hub or this switch, and this switch checks the message and sees that that message has to come to this PC. So basically, that's what's happening. Now we can also compare bridges. What is the difference between a bridge and a router? So basically, they both transfer data packets. Secondly, consider they can connect. A bridge connects two or more LANs together, while a router will connect a network to the internet. Scans and uses devices MAC address. Scans and uses what the IP address is. No routing table use. Uses a routing table. So the bridge also is able to connect network that use. They only connect network using the which use the same communication rules. But routers are able to connect network with different protocols. So a bridge, for instance, will have just two ports, but a router has multiple ports. Now, most school computers have, so this is a question. So most school computers networks have a router and switches. Explain what is meant by a switch. So basically, you describe what a switch is. Say they allow many computers to be connected to it. You can learn and store addresses, or you can learn and store addresses of each computer in that part of the network. You also want to mention that they can direct data to specific computers or devices on the network using the MAC address or yeah, the table, the MAC address of that device. Now, they also describe the purpose of a router. So some few things you could mention is that the routers basically connect networks or computers to the internet. They make use of the IP addresses to transfer data between networks. They connect LANs and networks together. I also want to mention they can connect multiple networks to the internet. Yes, different communication protocols. Now, the next thing we want to look at is this particular type of network, wireless network, that is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So this is a very interesting type of network which is commonly used. So this is an example of Wi-Fi, and here we have Bluetooth. Now they both enable wireless communication between devices. So basically they are wireless networks. So we don't make use of cables. Data is carried by electromagnetic radiation from device to device. So this is like an illustration of the radiations. So there is no contact between devices, but radiations always carry your signals. Now, some key features of Wi-Fi networks is that they operate full-scale net. They are operating full-scale networks. Yeah. Then there's also your faster data transfer. It offers better transfer bandwidth and security. We also see that they can transfer files between devices 100 meters apart. So that's also a very good advantage. It's with wireless Wi-Fi that we've been able to communicate across the globe. Now, some Bluetooth features are that they can transfer data between devices close to each other. So for Bluetooth, we're looking at a distance less than 30 meters, while for Wi-Fi, we're looking at up to 100 meters. Now, for Bluetooth, we have slow data transfer when you compare it to Wi-Fi. Then we also have a low bandwidth, such as in sharing of small file sizes. So you can't share large file sizes when you're dealing with Bluetooth. It's gonna take a lot of time, and in most cases, at times you won't even go through. And then uses key encryption to create a secure wireless personal area network. So with this Bluetooth, for instance, you can create a wireless personal area network and do maybe some messaging where you just need a low bandwidth to deal with that. Now, some main advantages of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are that they are cheap and reduces network costs, especially cabling costs. So imagine they're asking you, would you want to use a wireless or you want to use a wired networks? So this is one thing you might consider that, oh, the wireless Wi-Fi network or the Bluetooth network would definitely not need a lot of need cabling. So all I need is just Bluetooth device connect and good to go. Another point is that they are easy to connect multiple devices to share resources. So it's possible for you to connect multiple devices on a wireless network. And we also have reliability and easy transfer of files when you deal with this network. So there's encryption. So meaning your files are network is reliable and you can easily transfer files. Now we can also compare Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and find that they don't make use of cables that are both wireless networks. We find that for Wi-Fi, data transfer is affected by obstacles like walls, so that affects and etc. Then also how for Bluetooth, data transfer is affected by obstacles like walls also. And then for the Wi-Fi, as we mentioned, there is fast data transfer rates up to about 21 megabytes per second. But for Bluetooth, the data transfer rate is quite slow, just up to 3 megabytes per second. And then for Wi-Fi, we saw that a longer transfer range of up to about 100 meters, while for Bluetooth, we have a transfer range of up to about 30 meters. Now, Wi-Fi allows multiple devices to connect depending on the router you're making use of. But for Bluetooth, only a maximum of 8 devices can connect in most cases, unless maybe you probably have boosters or so. Now, a sample question on what we just did, you compare and contrast Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So when they say you should compare and contrast, simply they want you to look for similarities and differences between the two networks. So we've seen quite a number of them. You could look at things like, once you see a question with 6 marks like this, you can give 3 points here and 3 points here, or you can give 2 and then 4. But don't give maybe 1 here and 5 here. That most cases they won't accept that. So you give 2 and 4 or 3 3. In most cases that is what you have to do. Now for similarity, we're looking at they are both what they both allow several devices to be connected. They both make use of wireless communication. Both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi use what radio frequency for communication, that's the electromagnetic waves. Both make use of security when sending data, so there's some form of encryption. Then differences, we have Wi-Fi has faster data transfer rate than Bluetooth, that clearly we saw. Wi-Fi has a greater range of transmission compared to Bluetooth, yes. And then Wi-Fi can be broadcasted. Bluetooth has more communication channels. Wi-Fi connects more devices. So we saw that Wi-Fi can connect multiple devices, while Bluetooth is limited to only about 8 devices. So that's also a difference. Now let's look at a little bit of cloud computing. I think we looked at this in chapter 5, where basically we store data in a remote location on servers in different locations on a network. So it's just the network aspect of it here that we want to try to look at. So clients can access their data at any time by connecting to the server. So that's the networking aspect of it. So you have your data stored somewhere in a remote location. You just need your phone or your laptop or your tablet or whatever device you can connect to the internet with and browse to access your files. Now, we have 3 common cloud storage systems when we're dealing with networks. We have the public cloud. The public cloud, which is a storage environment where the client and storage provider are different companies. So that's a public cloud. And then we have a private cloud where storage is provided, the storage provider and the client are they work together and operate as a single entity. Then lastly, we have a hybrid cloud where we have a combination of public and private cloud storage. So in this one, uh, we have maybe two people coming together maybe to form something much larger. And then we have the problem that more sensitive like private data is kept in the private cloud and public or commercial data is kept in what the public cloud storage for public access. So when you have a hybrid cloud, you have uh, two main parts of it. You have the private section and public section where sensitive and private data is kept in the private cloud while public data is kept there or commercial data which is can be accessed by the general public is kept in the public cloud. So this is just an illustration, this is probably network systems. This is a whole server, and these are computers, printers, scanners, and the rest, cameras. They can all sync whatever they do to the cloud, and that's how right now with development in technologies, Internet of Things, and the rest, you can be in a different continent and you're watching your environment. You can see your cameras through the cloud, like you can see what is happening in your house and all those things. So that's how far technology has advanced, and that is where networks come into play. The internet, your house is networked with cameras, and the cameras can sync that data to the cloud, and you can watch it from wherever you are. So in real time, you see what is happening. Now we also have advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing. So firstly, we'll look at that files can be accessed at any time from anywhere using many devices, any device connected to the internet. So that's an advantage of cloud computing. Another advantage is that it provides a remote backup of data to clients and customers. So you always have your data backed up somewhere. So there's no need for clients to move around with storage devices. Allow recovery of data to clients, provides like remote storage capacity. So these are all advantages. In terms of disadvantages, we're looking at the fact that your data might not be very secure. Yeah, obviously you're not in complete control of that data, so it's not perfectly still secure. So the storage network can always be hacked. So cost can be high for a large storage space. So that's another disadvantage. Any possible failure of the cloud storage can lead to data loss. So this is also a big disadvantage. Imagine the network or the company you're doing your cloud storage with decides to maybe they have a technical problem and a shutdown, you won't be able to access your data. Now, if the client has a slow data connection, accessing the cloud storage can be difficult. Yeah, this is also a major issue. When you store things in the cloud, very often your internet really needs to be good for you to access what you have in that cloud. Now, yeah, getting into another part of the networks where we look at types of networks. Now, when we under types of network, we're just trying to look at how do we bring together the switches, the hubs, and the rest, the computers. What kind of networks can we use them to form? So the first type of network we look at will be the local area network. Then we'll look at a wireless local area network and a wide area network. So these are just their ranges as we can see here. Now, the first one is a local area network. So for a local area network, we find that it's just a small network that can cover a small area like a building. So like maybe if you are a student in your ICT lab or your computer lab, that's a local area network. Within a hospital, it's a local area network. In a company, it's a local area network. So the coverage area is about 10 meters to 1 kilometer. So that's a local area network. A local area network has a number of computers and other devices connected to a hub or switch which intend to connect to the internet via a router. So this is a simple local area network. If you want it to communicate with the outside world, you just add a router to the network. Now, LANs are used here Commonly, you find local area networks in schools, like I mentioned, hospitals, companies, and etc. Now, some advantages of LANs are that the first advantage is that LANs enable sharing of hardware and software resources. So, if you connect computers together, they can share a printer, they can share scanners, and the rest. And then you also allow communication between users of the LAN. So it's easy. Maybe you have different departments in the same, maybe in a large geographical location. You can network the computers in that place so that the people can communicate from between themselves without moving, without any movement. Now, in terms of disadvantage, you have what we call security risks. So there's easy spread of viruses, especially when you have networks like this. If main server breaks down, the whole network can stop functioning. So that is also a disadvantage. Now, the next type of network we're looking at is wireless local area networks. So the one obviously we're looking at is a wired network. Now we want to look at a wireless local area network. So a wireless local area network is just it makes use of radio infrared signal to connect devices together over short distance instead of cables as in LAN. So this is an example of a wireless local area network. You have your access point, which is your router. So access points are connected to into LANs to enable wireless communication. So the access point is usually it's a router. So this router is able to give out a signal that all these computers or these devices can tap into. The devices are networked to communicate via this router, which is often known as the access point in a wireless local area network. Access points also allow the local area networks and wireless local area network to receive and transmit data between devices. So basically, the access point here will help with file sharing and communication between these devices. Now, we also have can also compare the wired and wireless local area networks. So this one is just a matter of easy to expand the wireless network. While for the wired network, due to the use of cables, it might be difficult. And then we have devices can be moved around within the network coverage area. That's true. Here, devices are fixed due to cabling, safer due to lack of cabling. This one, cabling is cheaper but can cause accident. Yeah, you can trip on cables in the lab. And then for wireless, it's prone to interference from other signals and slow data transfer rates. That's always a problem with the wireless networks. Then we have faster connectivity and data transfer due to cabling. So we usually have faster connectivity when we deal with wired networks. Then for wireless, we're having issues of less security. Radio waves can easily be hacked, so that has always been a problem. And then for wired networks, we're looking at the fact that cabling is more secure and difficult to hack into network. Yeah, so very often you find that wired networks are more secure than the wireless networks. Now, the last type of network we'll look at is the wide area networks. So for wide area networks, we're looking at seeing the fact that wide area network extend over large geographical area. So, for instance, a whole city or a whole country is usually connected using a wide. It can be connected using a wide area network, and then now these wide area networks connect to the internet, forming what we call that's what we then term a global connection or interconnection of computers. So in most cases, wide area networks are a combination of different networks. For instance, if in a country, different towns will have their small local area networks, and these small area networks now join together to form a one. Now, one make use of telephone networks and satellites for communication. So that is what gives them their large coverage area. So they can basically cover up to 100 kilometers and even over 1000 kilometers. So examples of ones are the internet. So what we call the internet is actually a wide area network. And ATMs, you see, you can be almost anywhere once you have a card which is allowed to function out of your country, you can always use that. So ATMs also are connected through the internet. So for this first part of the tutorial, this is it about types of network devices, network terms, and then the various types of networks. So we will continue from here. Uh, we will continue from here to look at network issues and communication. For network issues and communication, we're looking at security issues. Basically, we'll start with security issues regarding data transfer. So the most common security issues you will face maybe when you're during data transfer is often things like hacking, phishing, farming, and viruses. And also we'll look at authentication method. How do you authenticate that? Oh, what is coming from here is actually what I needed. And then we'll look at electronic conferencing, which where we'll look at web conferencing, video conferencing, and audio conferencing. Okay. The first security issues we'll look at is hacking. So basically, hacking is just unauthorized access to someone's computer system. So basically, that is what hacking is all about. So as you saw in this picture, yeah, people always think hackers are some mysterious people, also, but they're just normal human beings. But all they do is just to gain unauthorized access to your computer system. Now, what are some of the security risks or issues associated with someone hacking into your computer? The first issue you could face is that they could steal and misuse your personal information. Secondly, they could delete, edit, or replicate or even corrupt your files. So very often it's for people to, when they hack into your system, is to steal your information, maybe for blackmail and all those things. Now, how can you reduce the risk of people, your computer or your system being hacked? You should use firewalls. So make use of firewalls. You could use very strong password because hacking is just probably at times somebody breaking into your email address, reading your emails and all those things. And then use anti-hacking softwares as well. So there are softwares that will help you from, limiting, maybe blocking some people from hacking you. Now, the next security issue is phishing. So for phishing, we're looking at phishing is basically use of they use a legitimate looking emails to target users with links or attachment, thereby stealing their personal data. So phishing, they just send you like a legitimate looking email from somebody probably you know, and they target you with links or attachment, thereby stealing your personal data. Very often they are things that they think you are excited about. So maybe free money, free gift and all those things. Once you click back, they've stolen something from you. So instead of you taking, they take from you. Now, some security risks, the risks associated with phishing is that they can access your personal data, obviously. That is why they're doing that. They can access your bank account details, your credit card numbers, identity. They can, because right now, identity theft is quite rampant, and then they could even do some fraud. So when they see your identity, they could use you to commit a crime and get caught for a crime you didn't commit. And now, how can you prevent these risks? You just need to be cautious with opening emails or attachment. So don't click on execute the attachment with file extensions like .exe, .bat. Most .bat files, this some people create viruses like that, .com or .php. So you just need to be careful with that. Another security issue we have is farming, where which means that people make use of malicious code to redirect a user to a fake website without their knowledge. So you just click maybe and they redirect you to your website without you actually knowing. And once that website opens, the system has been compromised. So it is often installed on a user's computer or on a web server. So once you just uh, open that code, you launch it, it redirects you somewhere else and they gain access to your computer. Now, what are the security risks? They can gain access to your personal data as usual. They could steal data and use it for fraud. And how do you prevent this kind of risks? You could use anti-malware that can identify and remove such codes. Yeah, so there's some software that can help you with that. And I always be alert when browsing online. So don't just be browsing and you're not actually looking at what is happening. And be careful with the links or the code you try to say click on this and do this. You don't necessarily need to do that. So watch out for those kind of things. Now, viruses and malware. For viruses, it's a very common thing. So viruses are basically codes or software that can replicate or copy itself with intent to delete. So the intent of the virus or malware is to delete, copy, or corrupt computer files, leading to malfunction. So at times they even hack your computer and then just maybe send you a virus or so. And before you know it, it has corrupted files in your computer or deleted files. Now, the effect of viruses is that it will crash your computer drive. There's deletion of files, slows down computer by corrupting your operating system. And how can you prevent viruses? You install and constantly update antivirus software. You could use software from legal sources. So cracked softwares, for instance, they are not good. Then careful when opening email links or attachment so that because some of them are links that are actually viruses. So once you click, they get executed. You have to watch out for that. Now, what are some security authentication methods? How do you authenticate um, yourself or yeah system on a network or devices? So the first one is password. So this is a very common method. So the advice is that for you to stay away from those security issues, make sure you use strong passwords to log into email accounts, social networks, and online banking. It's very important. Then a strong password should have, so this is an example of a strong password or the rules you should follow. Most websites you visit or banks or applications, they'll always give you a description of maybe a strong website or what it should look like so that it is not easily captured. So very often you say at least one capital letter, at least one numerical value, at least a keyboard symbol, and so on and so forth. And time they'll even tell you maybe at least 20 characters or so, depending on how secure that thing needs to be. So this is an example of a password. So this is something which is definitely difficult to crack. Now, you can ensure your login passwords are protected by. So how do you ensure that your passwords are protected? You change your password regularly. Yeah. So if you really need something protected, you should change the password regularly. You can also run anti-spyware to make sure your passwords are not stolen. So people steal other people's passwords, so that's often a problem. Use strong passwords that are difficult to crack. Now, another type of authentication method we have is zero logins and biometrics. So for zero login, so this is a new technology basically which does not require a user to enter a password. So a user is recognized based on what? Biometrics and behavioral patterns. So for biometrics, we are very familiar with that. We saw biometric when we were looking at emerging technologies. So for biometrics, it can be, if you've forgotten biometrics, you can go back to chapter 1, emerging technology. So for biometrics, we are dealing with things like your fingerprint, your facial recognition. So you don't need to enter a password. Once the system, maybe you need to use a camera, sees your face, it can recognize unless your face changes. Your fingerprint, everybody has a unique fingerprint. So that's a very good authentication method. And then for behavioral patterns, we look at like common location, your typing speed, how you talk or walk. So those are behavioral patterns. Like if the I are always in certain place and at some point they just discover that you have gone very far away, maybe even out of that continent. It's not usual. So that might raise an alarm. Now, main advantage is it is difficult to replicate biometrics or behavioral patterns of a user. That's very true. And it's easier to log into the vital system, so that's an advantage too. Just show your face or you thumbprint and the rest, and you get access, which is and it's more difficult to remember password. Disadvantages. So user monitoring is still a concern. So very often, like especially when I'm using behavioral patterns, it means they'll be monitoring you, like they know your location at any time t. That's why if you log in with a computer maybe from somewhere else out of your usual location, they'll signal you that, oh, your account has been accessed from this place. If it is not you, kindly report or change your password immediately, those kind of things. So they're monitoring you. Now, some exam question. So they say complete the sentence below using the most appropriate word from the list. So the first one is cookies, hacking, farming, phishing, smishing, spam, spyware, virus. So the act of gaining unauthorized access to your computer system is called hacking. The software that gathers data by monitoring key presses on a user's keyboard is called what? Spyware. A fake text message that could contain a link sent to a mobile phone is called smishing. Now we need to look at security authentication method. So the next security authentication method is magnetic stripe cut and smart contactless cut. So this is something I think we looked at in chapter 2 where we look at direct data entry devices. So for magnetic stripe cards and smart contactless cards, these are just security cards used to gain access to secured system or devices. So security card basically you have a chip and an antenna which can act as a contactless card. So they can hold data like your ID number, photos, sex, date of birth, PIN, and etc. Now with this information you can swipe a card also or just flash a card and you get access to a system or into a building. Some cards make use of holographic imaging as an additional security measure. So where there's really need for high level of security, such things come into play. So a user is only given access to a system or network after the data from a swipe or scan card matches the data inside the system. So they store your data in the system like your ID number, your photo, your sex, date of birth, PIN, and others. So once you swipe a card and the information matches, at times you need to even do a facial recognition. If everything matches with what they have in the database, you are given access to that system. Advantages: easy to use, can be multi-purpose, doors, network access, and this, yeah, like I said. So these cards you can use them for doors, networks, and others. The disadvantage of this type of authentication method is that they are less secure compared to biometrics. They wear out over time. Yeah, your card can wear out over time. Then we have another type of authentication method, which is physical tokens and electronic tokens. So for a physical token, it's simply a form of authentication in the form of a hardware or solid object. So the name physical means it's something you can actually see. So disconnected physical token is it's basically it's a type of it's like a separate device used and a user keys in one time pin or password manually. So disconnected physical token. So you can actually disconnect it from the device and then uh, you use it like once you use when you're using it you key in a pin to get manually to get access to a system. Why for a connected physical token it is usually connected to the system being used and automatically transmits the generated one-time PIN or password. So it's like you plug the device, a pen drive or something is usually in the form like a thumb drive. So once you plug it to your system, it automatically generates a PIN and gives you access into a system. So electronic tokens are software or application installed on a user's device. So we discuss physical tokens. For electronic tokens, we are looking at software or application installed on a user's device. So the user uses a code generated by the app whenever he or she wants to gain access to a system, website, or network. So that's like we call it authentication methods. You just open the app, it gives you a code, you use that code, maybe put it on a website, and you are allowed given access into that site. Now, another authentication method or security authentication method we look at is anti-malware. So for added as security, computer network and its devices should have what antivirus software, which runs constantly and scans all software files and devices for viruses. So basically, it's also important for you to understand how an antivirus or anti-malware actually works. So the first thing is once you like, what they do is they constantly check files or software for viruses before allowing them to run. For instance, if you connect a pen drive to your computer, immediately the first thing that detects that will be your anti-malware, and immediately checks to ensure that there's no virus on that device before allowing you to even access it. Now, firstly, it checks for certain software behaviors that indicate possible viral threats. So the anti-malware has like a database which has been like it's a trained system which gives it information on what to look for to determine if it's a virus or not. So it compares whatever possible virus against what a database of known viruses. It identifies viruses in which case the virus is immediately put in quarantine, deleted, or it will prompt you that they have sent a virus and maybe they put it in quarantine. So you can decide to delete it or you indicate that it's a false threat. So basically, when someone is developing a virus, what they do is they try to trick the database, maybe create something new that the database is not aware of. That way, that's why some viruses are stronger than others because some they don't have all what it takes to be able to detect a virus. So simply here you have like these are different files. Once you bring it here, you have like your antivirus software. It checks the file immediately, compares with the database, and if it finds a virus, it gives a danger sign or alerts the user. If the virus is not found, it, it takes and you can access the file with no problem. Now, so some example question on what we just looked at. So they say banks keep their customer account records on their file servers. Describe three ways in which hackers could misuse this data. So banks keep their customer account records on their file servers. So banks have servers. Now, how could like a hacker gain access to these servers, misuse this data? So the first point you need to know is that hackers may read the data or even find out embarrassing details and pass it on. Yeah, so hackers may delete the data or remove accounts. They can even delete. So there was this story: the hacker hacked a bank and was able to steal like $1 from everybody's account. Now, hackers may create new accounts to defraud the bank, so that can also happen. Then they can be transfer money from customer account to hacker's own account. That's what very often they do. But for the past stories we read, people usually hack and then they just share the money. Maybe they send it to charity and all those things. Now they said describe the purpose of three different authentication techniques. So we just looked at authentication techniques. So the first one here, there are many of them, so we'll just look at a few. Biometric methods where we use because so they say describe the purpose. So why are they being used? Purpose. What do they serve? So what do they do? So biometric methods are used because they are unique to each customer. So only customers with specific biometric features can access that account. So simply the purpose is they are unique to each other. So only the customer with that unique biometric can have access to the account. Then we have usernames and passwords, which are able to identify the customer to the system. So a customer won't be able to access the system if the username does not match with the password. So unauthorized users will not know the right username and password combination unless maybe you tell them. So that is the authentication technique. Its purpose is just to give you access to the system by you entering the right username with its corresponding password. Then we also have magnetic stripe cards or smart cards or even physical and electronic tokens, which prevent people without cards, readers, physical or electronic tokens from what accessing the system. Now, the last part of this video, what we're looking at is video conferencing or electronic. We'll start with electronic conferencing, and the first aspect of electronic conferencing, what to look at is video conferencing. So basically, yeah, this is something that's really been has since the COVID video conferencing has really been a very common thing. So we use it's just basically use of video and audio. So you make use of both video and audio in real time by people in different parts of the world to communicate through a network of computers. For instance, if you find this group of people here, they might be connected to the same network. So instead of communicating physically like this, what you do now is you connect through the computer. So this person here, instead of communicating here with the lady, they are able to communicate through the computer. One person is communicating from one end, and the other person is replying from his or her own end. So that is basically video conferencing. So basic hardware, you need to take note of this. At times they'll ask you what are some hardware that somebody will need to set up a video conference. So we have webcams. Definitely you want to see your face, that they should see your face. We have large monitors or screens, especially for big conferences. We have microphones, speakers, and many others. Then setting up a video conference. So what do you need to consider? Yeah, you might be asked, what do you need to consider when setting up a video conference? The first thing is you need to agree on a time and date when you want to have your meeting and at what time. Secondly, the meeting setup must be well checked before the conference starts. So you check to ensure that everything is working perfectly well. So check that all hardware are well positioned and functioning well. So check that the camera is pointing where it's supposed to, the microphones are working, the speakers are working. And delegates must log into the video conference system. So everybody, if you want to be part of the meeting, you must log in. Now, we also have electronic conferencing, so video conferencing. Advantages of video conferencing is that we have the fact that it's easy to hold conferences within a short notice. So reduces costs, yeah, also reduces costs, no need to travel for meeting in other location. Yeah. So you can just email it somebody, oh, people, I want to have a chat with you, a brief meeting with you, just 5 minutes, good. So with less than no time you have your meeting and it's over. You don't need to travel from one place to another. Now, disadvantages of video conferencing, potential lacks in audio or video. Yeah. So at times somebody will speak this after some few seconds before you even hear what the person is saying. So initial setup is usually expensive. That's true. You need to probably buy webcams, microphones, speakers so that everything is good. So that's a disadvantage. Another type of electronic conferencing is audio conferencing. So this one is basically audio call. So you call the person, you don't need to see each other, but you make like a group call. Yeah, some people call it group call. So that's audio conferencing. So you could be discussing something important, or you could just be having a friendly conversation. So meeting held over a telephone network between persons using just sound. So that's an audio conference. So how do you set up an audio conference? So the first thing is the audio conference will organize a request for two pins from the phone company. So yeah, you can do that, but in very often now you don't really need all these details. But ideally, you need your request for two pins from the phone company. The organizer, you will share the participant pin with other participant and time for the meeting. So there's a participant's pin and there's other pin is for the organizer. So the organizer starts the meeting by dialing the conference phone number and entering his or her own personal PIN. So that's the organizer's PIN. Participants also need to dial the conference phone number and enter their PINs to join the conference meeting. And then conference can also be held using computers with the help of voice over internet protocol. So that's the audio conferencing. And hardware. So hardware and equipment for audio conferencing will include a computer, external microphones, speakers, internet, phone, and may probably, yeah, you could also make use of a standard phone. So this is an example here, three people talking to each other. They don't need to see each other, so that's audio conferencing. The last type of electronic conferencing we'll look at is web conferencing. So for web conferencing, we make use of multiple computers connected over the internet. So basically, this could be for business meetings, presentation, or online educational training like we are doing now. So features of web conferencing, so have sharing of presentation slides or documentation prior to meeting. So you can share your documents or uh, files before the meeting takes place. The host computer can share electronic resources or presentation from their screen in real time. So while you're speaking or presenting, you share exactly that in real time. So it's possible when you're dealing with web conferencing, like Zoom, for instance. Instant messaging or just chatting. It's also possible. And then we have sharing of videos and images. So it's also possible when you're dealing with sophisticated web conferencing applications. To finalize everything in this second part of the tutorial and the chapter 4, which is networks and the effects of using them, we'll look at the question, which the question says the company is setting up a video conference. Name 3 computer hardware devices they would need. So, like I said before, basically they'll need speakers, camera, microphone, light monitor, also screen, and probably many others depending on their requirements. And B, they say the company could have set up a web conference rather than a video conference. Describe what is meant by a web conference. So they just want you to describe a web conference. Once it's 4 marks, meaning you need to give 4 good points. So the first point you could give is it enables real-time communication between people. Yes, so you can communicate and see in real time. Then multiple people get connected through the internet, so that's also an advantage. That's also a description of web conferencing. So web conferencing also allows instant messaging and exchange of information. Fourth point is files and documents can be shared before the meeting. So we saw something like that also. And then it allows for sharing of videos and images in real time. So these are some 5 points. You could choose any 4 from them and give to describe a web conference. So thank you for listening and learning. Like and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comment section if you have any comments. Thank you very much and see you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.